The streets of Europe have changed. Cities once synonymous with order, safety, and prosperity now face unprecedented challenges. Mass immigration has transformed the lives of millions, but at what cost? Rising crime, segregated neighborhoods, and collapsing systems. Which countries have been hit hardest? Can the situation be reversed? Today, we'll explore the 10 European countries most devastated by immigration. Some cases will surprise you, others will alarm you, but the number one is simply shocking. Let's dive in. 10. Denmark. Denmark has been admired for decades for its high quality of life, robust social safety net, and seemingly unshakable collective spirit. The country prided itself on striking the perfect balance between economic growth, equality, and freedom. However, the influx of mass immigration has shaken this atmosphere, sparking concerns among parts of the population. Before this wave, most Danes trusted public institutions that delivered quality education and a solid healthcare system. Copenhagen's neighborhoods reflected this serenity, with welcoming urban spaces and rare outbursts of conflict. Yet, an aging population demanded more labor as birth rates remained low, leading to subtle encouragement of foreign workers to fill gaps in sectors where locals were insufficient. What they didn't know was that immigration would ruin their country. The need for workers in services, agriculture, and industry prompted governments to loosen visa requirements. When the refugee crisis erupted in the mid-2010s, Denmark faced a dilemma. Accept thousands of asylum seekers seeking a future in Europe. Some responded with empathy, but the country's actual capacity didn't always match this goodwill. They sensed trouble brewing. The surge in immigration sparked tensions in neighborhoods where integration wasn't guaranteed, forming isolated communities detached from Danish society. Police reports noted a significant rise in crime in specific areas, alongside the emergence of gangs linked to foreign origin groups. Cultural prejudices fueled local distrust toward those perceived as outsiders to Danish values. Denmark's pristine image cracked as clashing customs, housing shortages, and unstable job prospects led to insecurity and urban ghettos. Denmark lies in ruins, grappling with an adaptation crisis that threatens its celebrated welfare state balance. 9. Netherlands. The Netherlands, with its picturesque canals, tulip fields, and aura of a liberal, modern society, has long been an emblem of tolerance and openness. Amsterdam's bohemian multicultural fame reflects the Dutch tradition of embracing diverse ideas, commerce, and people. However, the intensified arrival of immigrants over the past decade has disrupted this serene image, forcing society to reassess its integration capacity. For years, the Dutch boasted a coexistence model where religious and sexual diversity, secularism, and individual freedom thrived alongside a strong sense of order. Foreigners flocked to a booming economy, multinational corporations, and a socially responsible state. The need for labor in various sectors spurred policies easing immigrant settlement, especially for skilled workers. Integration, though not without friction, seemed manageable. Recently, however, the situation grew complex. Amid the global financial crisis and instability in the Middle East and Africa, more people arrived seeking refuge or economic relief. Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and other coastal cities felt the impact of multiplying asylum seekers, often housed in hastily adapted facilities. Overcrowding in certain neighborhoods, housing shortages, and struggles to provide adequate support emerged. Some districts saw a rise in crime tied to youth gangs forming ghettos where might ruled. In short, the Netherlands has suffered severe consequences from this immigration, and some are no longer willing to endure it. Government statistics show a significant crime rate increase in areas with high irregular immigration or weak cultural ties. In response, parts of the electorate began viewing immigration as a direct threat to stability, boosting populist parties advocating for national identity protection. These parties warn of losing Dutch values and civic cohesion that once defined the nation. 8. Greece. Greece, the cradle of democracy and a cornerstone of Western thought, exudes an undeniable allure for history and Mediterranean culture enthusiasts. Its islands, ruins, and people weave a millennia-old heritage that captivates millions of tourists yearly. Yet, over the past decade, Greece has grappled with mass arrivals of refugees and migrants, mainly from Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and other conflict or poverty-stricken regions. This phenomenon has radically altered a nation already reeling from its financial collapse. The Greek economic crisis, erupting in 2010, worsened living conditions, spiking unemployment and precarity. Greece's geographic position as Europe's gateway for those fleeing Middle Eastern wars turned its islands into the first stop for thousands crossing the Aegean from Turkey. Lesbos, Samos, Chios, and other once touristic paradises were overwhelmed by refugees, leading to overpopulation, rising crime, and insecurity for many Greeks. The local population, already battered by economic decline, often felt overwhelmed and betrayed. Fears of tourism's impact, one of Greece's economic pillars, sparked hostility from groups blaming migrants for deterring visitors. Crime near refugee camps surged, reinforcing perceptions that mass foreign presence threatened public order. On the mainland, Athens absorbed part of this influx, with entire neighborhoods becoming migrant hubs. The under-resourced police struggled with theft, drug trafficking, and sporadic violence. While the government admitted being hamstrung without international aid or reformed EU asylum policies, the rise of extremist political voices soon followed, with groups advocating border closures and defending Hellenic identity, arguing that Greece, amid its own crisis, couldn't shoulder others' burdens. 7. Spain, let's move to a familiar country. Spain is globally renowned for its cultural richness, enviable climate, and vibrant cities. For decades, its history of blending Romans, Arabs, and Jews forged a unique identity tied to coexistence. The late 20th century tourism boom and economic growth made Spain a magnet for immigrants seeking a better future. However, mass influxes, especially of illegal immigrants, combined with economic crises, have had a significant social and institutional impact in recent years. Before immigration became so pronounced, Spain enjoyed relative internal peace, despite regional tensions in Catalonia and the Basque Country. Madrid and Barcelona welcomed waves of tourists and expatriates, boosting the job market and cultural offerings. Coastal areas like Costa del Sol and the Canary Islands attracted British and German retirees. Immigration discourse was generally calm. The 2008 financial crisis changed this. The recession hit Spain hard, skyrocketing unemployment. Meanwhile, migration routes from Africa and Latin America persisted, with many aiming for the EU via Spain. Spanish enclaves in North Africa faced intense border crossing attempts, often with mass fence storming. The Strait of Gibraltar saw growing numbers of precarious pateras, small boats. Recently, the Canary Islands reported a 134% surge in irregular arrivals, overwhelming reception centers and sparking tensions with locals worried about strained resources. Inland, various regions received diverse immigrants, including many fleeing conflicts or extreme poverty. In places like Madrid or Catalonia, coexistence sometimes worked thanks to strong community networks. But elsewhere, concentrated newcomers without means led to friction. Informal settlements proliferated in suburbs or abandoned industrial zones, lacking basic services and becoming hubs of exclusion and, at times, crime due to limited job or documentation access. Many Spaniards say strolling Madrid or Barcelona's streets is no longer safe. Some even call Valencia violence. Crime spiked in certain areas, with headlines about neighborhoods controlled by Latin gangs or small African ghettos where police hesitate to enter. 6. Italy, home to monumental Roman legacy, the radiant Renaissance, and globally beloved cuisine, has been a crossroads of civilizations for centuries. Its history permeates every city, valley, and coast. Yet, its strategic Mediterranean position has made it a primary destination for African and Middle Eastern immigrants, a phenomenon that, as it intensified, has strained a country already facing structural and social challenges. In the past, Italy's image was one of touristic charm, where art and tradition merged with lively vitality. Rome, Florence, Venice, and Milan drew millions, fueling a stable, if unequal, economy. Southern regions like Sicily and Calabria, however, long struggled with high unemployment and organized crime. This geographic disparity worsened when thousands arrived by sea, fleeing conflict or seeking better prospects. Lampedusa and Sicily became critical landing points for overcrowded migrant boats. At times, daily arrivals overwhelmed local authorities. Reception centers, meant for short-term emergencies, became permanently saturated. Images of sea rescues, recovered bodies from shipwrecks, and overflowing facilities dominated news, stirring both Italian and global sentiment. A societal divide emerged. Some called for Christian or humanitarian hospitality, others for stricter controls and swift deportations. By the way, don't forget to like this video. 5. United Kingdom. The UK has historically been a magnet for migrants, fostering a cosmopolitan character and cultural diversity. From London to Manchester and Birmingham, British society long saw growth that, in theory, benefited the economy and social vibrancy. Yet recent years have shown immigration often outpaces institutional and community adaptability. Before the visible migrant surge, the UK enjoyed cultural cohesion, with a welfare state and NHS seemingly sufficient for natives and gradual newcomers. Its geographic and economic strength drew many seeking stability and opportunity. Immigrant numbers gradually rose, especially after EU expansion enabled free movement, alongside non-EU arrivals driven by the UK's stable reputation. Over time, legal and irregular migrant numbers strained public services. Healthcare faced unprecedented workloads, with longer NHS waiting lists. Critics blamed the migrant influx, while defenders pointed to underfunding and mismanagement. The job market also shifted, with some Britons feeling traditional jobs were taken by lower-wage immigrants, intensifying competition. This sparked resentment in industrial and rural areas, where locals felt sidelined. Analysts note automation and regional underinvestment also contribute, but perceptions of immigration's toll fueled Brexit. The UK's EU exit was partly a response to immigration control concerns, yet irregular crossings of the English Channel persisted, with media showcasing overcrowded boats attempting Dover landings. 4. Belgium. Belgium, a modest-sized state with outsized symbolic weight as home to key EU and NATO institutions in Brussels, is famed for chocolate, beer, medieval cities, and linguistic diversity among Flemings, Walloons, and German speakers. Despite internal divides, Belgium projected harmony for decades. However, recent African, Middle Eastern, and Asian immigration has strained this delicate balance. Before the migrant wave, Belgium's complex Flemish-French linguistic coexistence showed high welfare and thriving urban life, especially in Brussels. The economy benefited from EU expatriates and tourism drawn to historic architecture and cuisine. But rising immigrant numbers, seeking refuge or work, spiked population density in some Brussels neighborhoods, fostering urban ghettos where linguistic and cultural integration faltered. Molenbeek gained notoriety after links to Islamic radicalization, though labeling it a crime epicenter oversimplifies. Reports highlight poverty and criminal networks exploiting institutional neglect. Political tensions arise over lax asylum policies, allowing criminals or extremists to settle. Cities like Bruges, and Ghent remain stable, but Brussels' image shifts. Locals lament social service saturation and integration failures. Schools in some areas have many non-French or Flemish-speaking students, creating academic and disciplinary challenges. Crime rates in high-immigrant areas rose, with tense police-youth relations sparking occasional riots and hate speech. 3. Germany, Europe's economic powerhouse, is built on post-war discipline and pragmatism, known for efficiency, automotive strength, and an enviable welfare state. A key player in European integration, it long attracted immigrants with its prosperity. The turning point came in 2015, when Chancellor Angela Merkel's open-door policy welcomed over 1 million refugees, mostly from war-torn Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Initially lauded for humanitarianism, it sparked intense national debate. While Young Labour addressed an aging population's needs, many citizens felt overwhelmed, fearing resources and cultural balance were at risk. In cities like Berlin, Hamburg, and Munich, integration struggled in neighborhoods flooded with refugees lacking infrastructure. Crime rose in some areas, attributed to jobless immigrants caught in criminal networks. Nationalist anti-immigration movements grew, claiming open policies were tearing Germany apart. Police reported spikes in urban crimes, robberies, assaults, street clashes, with high-profile incidents like Cologne's 2015 New Year's Eve attacks fueling insecurity perceptions. Political polarization surged, with the far-right Alternative for Germany, AfD, gaining ground. 2. France. France, globally admired for its cultural, literary, and artistic legacy, has shaped democracy and universal rights. Paris shines as a beacon of fashion, cuisine, and innovation. Yet, its secular, egalitarian integration model faces immigration-related tensions that have brewed for years, erupting into instability and insecurity. Post-war economic booms drew immigrants from former African and Asian colonies, transforming France's demographic. Initially, society boasted integration capacity, but reality proved murkier. Suburban banlieues became hubs of marginality, unemployment, and despair. Paris's touristic facade hides peripheral districts where opportunity scarcity and cultural divides fracture coexistence. Unemployment among immigrants and their descendants far exceeds the national average, fostering frustration among youth of Maghrebi or sub-Saharan African descent, often sparking mediatized street protests or police clashes. Security has suffered in some urban zones. Riots and attacks over the past decade have cemented perceptions of a nation on the brink. Blaming immigration alone oversimplifies. Ineffective integration policies and socioeconomic gaps perpetuate segregation. Cities like Marseille, with high immigrant populations, also face mafia and drug-related crime. Historical colonial ties drove migration, and while some see diversity as an asset, terrorist attacks like Charlie Hebdo and Bataclan have deepened distrust toward Muslim communities, despite most rejecting such acts. 1. Sweden. Sweden's recent history fascinates for its contrast with today. Throughout much of the 20th century, it boasted an exemplary welfare system, low crime, and enviable social balance. Shaped by consensus, gender equality, and redistributive taxes, Sweden maintained high happiness and educational outcomes. The early 2010s mass immigration from Middle Eastern and African conflict zones tested its integration capacity. Before this influx, Sweden was open to immigration, but the scale surged with Syrian and other refugees. Sweden became a top per capita asylum destination, overwhelming services. Cities like Malmö saw radical shifts, with once quiet neighborhoods forming ghettos where integration lagged. Crime, including robberies, assaults, and shootings, rose sharply, shattering Sweden's violence-free image. Vulnerable areas emerged, heightening public concern. Social services buckled. Schools with non-Swedish-speaking students, overstretched healthcare, and a job market unable to absorb newcomers strained the welfare model. Many Swedes questioned the long-term viability of mass asylum policies, fearing erosion of the values that made their nation a stable utopia. The narrative of Sweden, destroyed by immigration, took hold globally, with rising gang violence as evidence of societal collapse. Hardline anti-immigration, Sweden Democrats gained political ground, reflecting growing public outrage. The government tightened asylum and border policies, but the perception of irreversible damage persists, with violence and insecurity dominating headlines. These 10 countries highlight immigration's complexity in Europe. Each, with its history and dynamics, faces a challenge beyond superficial debates, striking at the core of welfare and coexistence. From Brexit-driven UK to polarized Sweden, the stakes are high. If this analysis sheds light on this critical issue, I invite you to like and subscribe to keep exploring the transformations shaping our world.